Meeting to order. Try to fill Ms. Zadra's shoes today. Starting with roll call. Ms. Anderson.
Ms. Atchison. Here. Mr. Carano. Here. Mr. DeVold. Here. Mr. Dorch. Here. Mr. Farahi. Here. Mr. Humke. Here. Mr. Lennox. Mr. Pardue. Here. Ms. Roth. Here. Mr. Salerno. Here. Mr. Tretton. Here. Ms. Weber. Here. And Ms. Zadra.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Could I ask Commissioner Humke to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Moving on to item 3, which is the approval of today's agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. The agenda for today's meeting is approved. Moving on to public comments. I have one today from Mr. Sam Dene. Mr. Dene?
Sam Dene, the Encyclopedia of Reno Government, and the Mariano Rivera of local government watchdog oversight. I was sitting over there down the street having coffee at Starbucks with a bunch of my buddies, and they saw the agenda sitting there on the table, and they said, well, why don't you go over there and say hi to some of our friends? My friend Judge Bill Manell told me to say hi to John Farahi over there, one of the most successful businessmen in the history of Reno, Nevada, and he didn't ask me to say that. He came here to America with nothing but the clothes on his back and suitcases full of money, and turned himself into a very successful man. And we have, oh, by the way, people wonder, Sam, why do you salute the flag like that? Well, by the way, for those who don't know it, if you're a former military, you have the option to salute like that or put your hand over your chest. It's a law that came out about 6 months ago, and very few people seem to know it, or at least to be taken advantage of it, if that's the right word. Oh, and we have Mr. Carano over there, Glenn Carano, former quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, getting a little more gray hair, and he's got 3 Super Bowl rings, I think. And poor old Sam, all Sam has is what some people claim to be maybe a little bit of brain damage from too much boxing at the Air Force Academy, but that's a different story. I didn't really have much to say today. The meeting started kind of late, and my pals are all calling me to go back over there and get some coffee with them. Oh, and we had the prestidigitator of budgetary magic here, Mr. Smith, still running the operation after all of these years. And Mr. Smith, I'm sorry I won't be able to stay and listen to your erudite comments about the numbers concerning the convention center. By the way, I'm glad to see that the convention center operation is still in business after all of these years. Some people were questioning whether or not it would survive, but it continues to survive. I would have one suggestion, thinking back to what is the purpose of the Reno Convention Center, to theoretically do things for the local community, the Fairgrounds and Recreation Board. And one of the things I would recommend you do would be to provide a little bit more money to some of the operations, such as some of the important operations, such as the balloon races, the air races, because I've even heard rumors that they're going to move the air races away because they're not getting enough local support from the community. So I'm glad to be back. Don't feel badly that I have to leave right after this presentation, but have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Dene. Moving on to the review and approval of the minutes from the September 24th Board of Directors meeting. I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, yes, Mr. Farahi.
I was not here at the meeting.
Okay, Mr. Farahi abstains. Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on. Judging from the binder documents, looks like we have an action-packed President's report today. Ms. Oppenheim.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you today. The first thing I'd like to do is start off with a staff recognition, and one of the two people who I'd like to acknowledge today is here. The other, unfortunately, is traveling on business travel. But I think many of you saw that we released a press release and held a press event on new convention business that has been booked. The first that I want to recognize is Keith Kirsten, who's here. Why don't you stand for a moment, Keith? Keith was the salesperson who worked with the Wild Sheep Foundation. They have been coming to Reno and taking advantage of our downtown properties for a number of years. They have a contract that for the first time puts them in the convention center for their event in 2010 and had an existing agreement already in place for that. They have just signed a new agreement for 2013 through 2015, which is the agreement that, that Keith worked on, that will bring them back again to the convention center and to Reno Tahoe. Those 3 years alone represent 15,000 new hotel room nights and bookings. So thank you very much, Keith. Nice job. I'd also like to recognize, and as I say, she's traveling at the moment, but I don't want to miss the opportunity for you all to be aware that Robin Nichols, one of our national sales managers, booked the USA Volleyball. You saw a note about that about a week ago. That represents 40,000 hotel room nights for this coming June. So they'll be here late June into early July. It's virtually unprecedented to book a group of this size on this short a time frame. We are thrilled and delighted. They will be using practically every property in the region. It will fill the town with their junior nationals. This is a new volleyball group for us that's coming in to similar dates to the previous volleyball festival that had been here in late June. So that was one of Robin's bookings. The second booking of hers is Northern California Volleyball. This is the group that comes in late March, early April. They used to be 1 weekend long. They are now 2 weekends long. And they have just signed an additional 6 years with us, 6 consecutive years starting April 12th. April of 2012. This new contract represents 48,000 room nights if you put those 6 years together. And the final major one that Robin booked was the Veterans of Foreign Wars, who many of you will recall have been here before. They represent about 13,000 room nights for this market, and they will be coming in July of 2012 again. So I'm pleased to tell you, you'll see when you get to the convention sales report that the month reported on has been a positive one. These have been a few of the exceptional bookings, some of the largest ones, and I wanted to recognize Phil's team. And I know he'll convey to Robin that information from this morning. So let me move on then to some other things. On a little bit of a glimmer of encouraging news, Tim will talk about the August reports when we get to that point, but the early glimpse on the September room night results suggests that room tax for September, those revenues actually beat our budget. And that's the first time I've been able to say that in a very long time. So more news to follow next month when we have the actual report, but that's at least an encouraging sign that September was ahead of our budget on that. There are a few industry events that I just want to point out. I think because I did not give a regular report at that time, I did not mention earlier that the ESTO conference, which is basically the state tourism directors, met in the market in August. They were at the Hyatt. First meeting in this area that anybody can recall, very successful meeting. They were extremely pleased with the location and the event. We also had the National Ski Council Federation here that month, another opportunity to help bring more key industry leaders in the ski world here to help promote Reno Tahoe. And right now, Ralph and our facilities team are very heavily into the planning for the National Tour Association, and I sent you all a little bit of information about that. These are the typically bus operators from around the country who do tour groups who will be here in mid-November. We are the local, in fact, the local host for this. We've had great support from all of our partner properties and from NCOT and others in the region. And I would encourage you, I've sent out some information to join us if you're available and interested for as many of those events as possible. I would also point out that RTC has started the new rapid bus service on Virginia Street from downtown to Meadowood. There are a total of 6 stops. This is very positive from our perspective in terms of offering a much more effective public transit opportunity for conventioneers who are staying in downtown and attending events that are at the convention center. And we're hopeful that in some situations it will lessen our need to do shuttles because it's a very direct kind of route that's available. And in fact, Philip has been successful in negotiating with RTC to assist them in getting the software that will allow group ticket sales so that we can take advantage of it for USA Volleyball next summer. So we're very pleased and supportive about that. I would point out on the legislative kind of legal side that the direction you gave us to move forward seeking an opinion from the Attorney General on the hotel package issue is contained in your binder. That request went from the county containing both the staff position that was presented to the board and the position as presented by Mr. Pagni on behalf of the stakeholders, seeking that third-party perspective. That only moved forward from the county to the Attorney General in late September, so I'm guessing it will be a little while until we receive a response on that, but that has moved ahead. I did attend the Travel Leadership Summit put on by U.S. Travel in Washington, D.C., and while there, met with the entire Nevada Senate and Congressional delegation, along with Rossi Rauenkotter, excuse me, focusing on the Travel Promotion Act and thanking our delegation for their support on the issue of ensuring that government meetings are not discouraged from going to any specific locations as well. A few things on the community relations side. The Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce has invited the RSCVA to have a representative on the Reno Sparks Chamber Board in consultation between our chair and myself. We reached out and invited Roberta Ross to be our representative on the chamber. The chamber has very enthusiastically embraced that, and she will be starting, I believe, at their November meetings to represent the RSCVA there. So thank you in advance for your help with that. The City of Sparks had a Victorian Square brainstorming panel on Monday that I participated in with a very interesting group of panelists to help look at the future plans there. I participated in, as a member of NCOT, the commission meeting where the Freight House and Tessara projects were approved by the Nevada Commission on Tourism to go forward, and the city's moving forward on those. We have continued to work closely with Caltrans on debriefing on the summer 2009 travel challenges that we faced, and in preparing for 2010, we've already shared with them and with NDOT the list of major special events for this coming summer and asked for their assistance as much as possible to be sensitive to that when they are planning the construction schedules for this coming summer. The ribbon cutting for the new Hyatt Place took place a week ago for the new Hyatt directly across from the airport, well attended, and I can tell you it's a very attractive new property, and I suspect that will be very successful and will be well received in this community. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, I personally attended the Girl Scout Leadership Dinner, as I know a couple of other people here did as well, that recognized 4 exceptional women in this community for their contributions, and Ms. Lynn Atchison was one of the 4 honorees that evening and did a lovely job. I would just mention that on the special events side, that the panel has met and will be coming forward to the marketing committee with recommendations, and one of the things, among others, On the November board meeting will be the recommendations there. And it will be a fairly full agenda, I anticipate, for next month's meeting. But with that, please allow me to conclude pointing out that there are quite a few articles in the President's Report section, but the largest piece of that is the letter that went from the county to the Attorney General. So I won't go into any greater depth on any of those. So thank you very much, and with that, allow me to conclude my report.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, moving along then to item C, review of board procedures and open meeting law. Mr. Scolari?
The most exciting portion of the agenda today.
Glad you said that.
A couple of years ago, I asked Charlotte to include a couple handouts in your board packet. The first is our board procedures, and those were updated. Most of you probably recall a couple years ago, had a pretty good overhaul of those. Just wanted to put them back in front of everyone and see if there's any questions. And then I also wanted just to remind everyone of kind of how our structure works here as far as committees and then the board go. As you know, most of you serve on a committee. Those are advisory only. And whatever recommendations come from those boards are not approved until this board as a whole approves them. So anytime you approve something at a subcommittee, it's not necessarily set in stone until it gets to this board and is approved as part of the consent agenda or as part of an action item. So just want to remind you of that. I also, we follow the Robert's Rules of Order. I have a handout for everyone. I found a real handy parliamentary motions guide. It kind of goes through all the different motions that can be made, how they take precedent, exactly how many votes are needed to pass one, what trumps what. It's just kind of a handy guide for everyone to have. We've never really had a real, at least in the last couple of years, 5 motions on the floor and that kind of stuff going, but it can happen, so I want to make sure everyone has that handy and maybe bring it to the meetings with you. It could help. Is there any questions on just the board procedures? I know we went through this a couple of years ago, but wanted to, any ideas for changes or that something we should look at that folks have questions on as far as our board procedures go? Okay. The next handout is just, I always like to put the open meeting law manual in front of folks. As you know, that more and more you see issues in the press of boards that have violated the open meeting law. I'm pretty pleased to say I've been representing this board, I think, for almost 7 years now, and we've never had an open meeting law issue once. And I think that a lot of that has to do with staff. They make sure that each agenda is reviewed by council and by the chairman, which really helps. There's a couple things that you see the open meeting law opinions consistently come out on is boards straying from the agenda. Again, we cannot talk about something that's not on the agenda. Can't deliberate and act on something that's not on the agenda. You can discuss things that aren't on the agenda, but you can't take action on those. Another big issue that's come out in the open meeting law, and it continues to surface, is what they call serial meetings. Board to board member communication outside of this room is obviously permitted, but what isn't permitted, we've never had an issue with this, is you see an agenda item, on Tuesday that you want a certain action to happen, and you call 6 board members on the phone and you try to garner everybody's vote before the meeting. That's actually happened a lot with people, and they've ran into some problems with the Attorney General's office on that. So I just want to remind everyone, be mindful of the discussions you have outside of this room when you're talking to a board member. Social gatherings, those things, always fine. You can actually have a quorum at a social gathering. It's just you cannot have the communication with the intent to deliberate and act on an item that's going to be in front of this board on the public meeting day. So those are 2 big issues. I don't really have anything else unless anyone has a question on any of that, or agendas, how things are interpreted by the open meeting law. I'm always available. Shoot me an email if you have a question on an agenda item or why we're doing something the way we're doing it. Ellie and I can usually get it answered pretty quick. So just wanted to have a little reminder session, and especially since we had some new board members.
Thank you, Brett. Any other questions? Okay, thanks for making that fairly painless. Moving along to the items for board consent and the marketing committee report. Ms. Atchison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, as you will recall, it was not a short nor a dull meeting in September, but the board approved the market segmentation study, excluding the tagline, and staff is continuing to work with Mortar on another list of tagline options, and staff is also continuing to meet with key stakeholders to better understand their concerns and to receive feedback regarding these issues, because there are still a few out there. The committee supported this direction and urged staff to keep the process moving forward with the intent that all issues be resolved in order that the campaign could begin in early 2010. We feel there's an urgency to get this moving. Mr. Thomas shared the co-op marketing plan and initial cost estimates and shared that the RFQ process is on track to have a PR firm in place by January of 2010. The committee stressed once again the concern of an 11-year decline in visitors to this market, and once again supported the concepts of the campaign, built and designed on a base of significant amount of research, and supported the manifesto, the DNA of refreshingly offbeat, not apologetic, genuine, and a good value. The committee also once again recognized the exceptional efforts of Michael Thomas in leading this effort over the past year. The committee unanimously accepted the report on the update on the campaign platform creative. Agenda item E, convention sales lost business report. If you have not had a chance to read this, I would urge you to do so. The staff continues to fine-tune this report and trying to consolidate any duplications without skewing the data. The two top reasons for lost business, geographic preference remains the top one, meaning that the group did not wish to meet in the West or decided on an alternate location or alternate rotation. And the second is desirability. And the definition we use of that is the customer felt the destination would not draw attendees and or not so good perception of the area, which could not be overcome. Of note in this year's report, that different from prior years, was the increase in the reason for loss was board or committee decisions, where in the past, meeting planners have been very instrumental in making the decision of where to locate a convention. I think in these tough economic times, boards and committees are much more engaged in that process, and they are making that decision. The committee unanimously accepted the convention and sales lost business report. Agenda items F, G, H, convention sales, tourism sales, and marketing. First, we'll second Ms. Oppenheim's kudos to, but I think Ms. Oppenheim also deserves credit for these because she has worked diligently with her staff, and Mr. D'Amico, and of course Keith and Robin for their exceptional, incredibly successful month. The team achieved 248% of their monthly goal with 56,229 net total definite room nights. Their goal was 22,670. Year-to-date convention sales have achieved 172% of their definite room night goal. And as we mentioned last month, since we lowered the goals, we really want to see them exceed these numbers. Tourism sales achieved 46,635 room nights, or 91% of their monthly goal. Year-to-date, they're at 97% of goal. And as Ms. Oppenheim mentioned, the tourism sales and Reno Leisure Community hosted the annual National Ski Council Federation meeting in August. In marketing, the website activity continues to grow over prior year, And when comparing the RSCVA site usage in August to the national average for destination sites of similar size, visitors visit an average of 26% more on pages and spent 27% longer on the RSCVA site, which is really good news because our campaign, which hopefully will be kicked off at the beginning of the year, will be using the website as a major communication tool. Public relations ad equivalency was at 28% of goal, and that just illustrates the challenge of getting ad equivalency PR these days. And but ad circulation was at 178% of goal. The committee unanimously accepted all 3 reports. Mr. Chair, I move the board accept and approve the marketing committee agenda items D through H.
Thank you, Ms. Atchison. Have a motion
Move to approve.
and a second. Any discussion, questions? Yes, Ms. Ross.
Yeah, looking at the convention sales chart here, the lost business report, there are not enough walkable rooms for the convention. It looks like 08 and 09 is the first time that no one's complained about that, had an opinion about it. And I'm going to guess that's because of Rahu Skywalk that's going across the way, because now they have walkable rooms that are tied in real close. And I think that will help bring conventions, and that's kind of what it reflects for me there. The other thing is Ellie, in your president's report, you said that RTC now has the fast buses on the DIN school. I hope that when our marketing and sales go out, that we definitely tie in downtown with the conventions with the RTC bus. And I think that'll even make this, stay at a bigger zero in years to come. But they know that we have one project that's tied in real close, and then downtown is tied in closer and faster with buses. During the times of conventions, look at RTC and say, there's convention coming in, it's this and that, can we do more?
Can we do more buses at that time? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Mr. Farahi?
The reason there hasn't many complaints is because there's no business. But let me just tell you that from how we see it, we have not hit the bottom in this market. We have a lot of work to do. We have to be honest with ourselves. And I don't know when that would be, at least from our perspective. Now, September, I hear good news, but that's 1 month. You have to put a few months together before you can really make a judgment whether we're going in the right direction or not. But things are extremely tough out there, and we cannot let a piece of business get away from us. And I think that social media, like we have talked about early, and the web, and that is critical for future success. We just attended a meeting, 3-day meeting that University of Nevada had on the social media and how critical it is for future years. So I want to urge the marketing committee, well, Glenn, you guys have somebody working in that area. We try to hire them from you guys. You fought back. So anyway, it's very, very important that we put a lot of emphasis and time and resources in that area. Thank you.
I would just add on that is one of the major areas that the PR RFQ that we are going to distribute is specifically intended to address, because we agree with you, Mr. Farahi. That's of growing importance for all markets, and especially this one.
Thank you. Any more discussion on the marketing committee report? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on. As I understand it, the Finance Committee did not have a quorum last month, but with Chairman DeVold's consent, we've moved forward to bring the August financials to the board. So before I turn it over to Mr. Smith, Mr. DeVold, did you have any comments?
No comments, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. You have before you on page 1, well, for those of you that don't normally attend the Finance Committee meetings or are part of the Finance Committee meeting, there's a 2-page executive summary and analysis report as to the August report of operations and August transient lodging taxes. If I could turn your attention to the slide that's on page 1, that's on the overhead, you can see quickly year-to-date, we're 2 months into the fiscal year for July and August. Total revenues were just over $6 million compared to a budget of 6.8, or a decrease of over 800,000, or 11.8%. Room taxes continue to decline. We've seen unprecedented decreases in June, July. Of course, June is the prior fiscal year, but July and August totaling over close to 11% in tax collection decreases. As you look to your right in the green column, you'll see outlook versus the original budget. As we move through the year and close each month, we sit down with senior staff and revisit the outlook projections as it relates to, in this particular case, 10 remaining months of the fiscal year. And we make necessary up or down adjustments based on the information we know today. I'd like to remind you the budget in the blue, those are the budget numbers that the board approved that we were looked at back in March and April. So, of course, things do and have changed. Ellen had mentioned earlier, preliminary numbers for September do show a slight improvement over budget, and even though a slight decrease over the previous year, but certainly the decline softened slightly in September. As you may recall, last August, Labor Day kind of fell into August. This year we had Labor Day was more into the month of September, and we had very good weather for some of the special events that had occurred. But we, anyway, pleased to see a little bit of improvement. One of the goals that Ellen and I are looking at is, as we finish up our first quarter, our Q1, is to take a hard look at the impacts of the decline of room tax revenues for the first quarter, and also the deficit that we're carrying out of the 08-09 fiscal year as well. So we're going to be coming back and revisiting obviously some concerns there, and then the facility revenues are reflecting known changes in its activity and volume as well. So more to come on that. I'd like to turn your attention to the third slide here relating to the tax collections. Year-to-date through August, $48 million in taxable revenue. Budget was 54. You see that this is over 11% decrease. And again, the cash occupied rooms, the three key economic indicators that we monitor closely, obviously, are the cash occupied rooms, which produces cash average rate and produces taxable revenue. It continues to soften, as you can see, for the first 2 months of the fiscal year. Of the total occupied rooms in our market, only 40% were producing cash. Last year, we ended the year, it was about 38%. So we're into our strongest months, the June, July, August, September period. Those months account for a very high percentage of our total annual revenue, where we're able to put away cash for the softer shoulder months in the summer, or in the spring and late fall. So anyway, the decline is obviously a concern, and cash flow, so we'll be addressing those issues once we finalize and wrap up our first quarter, and we'll be bringing back some additional discussion points in our November Finance Committee meeting. Following this brief highlight report, you'll find a more detailed pages of the financials that take you through each of the operating facilities. I normally would not go into those details, but be certainly to answer any specific questions you may have. We try to do a brief flash report and highlight some of the key changes within the operating facilities, as well as the sales, marketing, G&A overhead areas. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask you accept the report and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions of Tim? Mr. DeVault?
Just one comment. The last 2 pages in your report, I think, are important. I think it's something that's helping the Finance Committee kind of understand what we're going to need to do in the future here. It shows what definite room nights and what tentative room nights are on those charts, and like I say, you can see that we've got 2014 as a big valley there. So you can, I think that's one of those very important reports that kind of helps us budget a little bit. But again, I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to that report, and thank you for supplying that. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I believe I'd need a motion at this point to accept the Move to approve. Yes. And a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, finance reports are accepted. Let's see, moving on to items for future board meetings. Ms. Oppenheim.
Thank you. I can alert you to a few. One, as I mentioned earlier, the special events panel recommendations will go to the marketing committee and then come on to the board at the next meeting. We'll also have an update from Jeff Eastman on the full TAP report for the meeting. The City of Reno has asked to come talk about the downtown trolley transit program, and so we'll have a presentation there. And I expect we will have our annual audit report in time for that meeting. And I would also point out, please mark your calendar for a little time afterwards for a small holiday celebration following the meeting. It's hard for me to believe that it's already that time of year again, but it is. And since we have a November meeting but not December meeting, that's when we'll be holding it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oppenheim. Moving on to board member comments.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ms. Hatch.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Oppenheim mentioned the National Tour Association being here for their annual meeting, which is good news for our city. But on November 14th, Saturday, November 14th, they're hosting a Jim Santini appreciation dinner. And if any of you are interested in attending this, if you would let Charlotte know, we are paying our own way. The rscva will have a couple tables, but it will be at our own cost. The dinner is at the Reno Events Center, and it's Jim Santini, when he served in Congress, was very actively involved in travel and tourism legislation, and then went on after he was no longer there to be a lobbyist and very engaged in government affairs for the Tour Association and travel and tourism. So the tickets are only $50. If you are inclined to go and express your appreciation, I'm sure he would be grateful. But you can let us know. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Atchison. Any other comments? I have one. As Mr. Farahi was just mentioning, there's still not a lot of great news out there, but certainly the 56,000 room nights booked last month is great news. So I'd just like to add my thanks to the convention sales team. Keep it up. And I also just got a text from my our director of sales and marketing up at the lake, who informs me that we have just won a 3-year contract with Special Olympics, the Northern California and Northern Nevada chapter, to bring them back to the lake, to our destination, for a 3-year contract that we estimate will generate about $400,000 in rooms revenue for 10, 11, and 12. So we're really happy about that, and of course delighted to have that event up at the lake. It had been at South Shore for the past several years, and some of the partners pulled out there, so we were delighted to pick that up. And we do have a mixer at the resort next Thursday to welcome the client and meet a number of community constituents. So if anybody would be interested in attending, we'd be delighted to have you. If you happen to be up at the lake or around, I'll get an invitation out to the board. So I wanted to mention that as well. Sure, for you, Mr. Farahi. Yeah. Don't you have a place up there? No? We'd love to have you. We'll leave the light on. We're running, I think we're running 22% next week, so if anybody needs a room, let me know. Any other board member comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion, move accepted. Meeting adjourned. I'll probably